Hello, welcome to Jurassic Park 3 Minutes. We'll be discussing the second Jurassic Park sequel, 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're back to finish out the week with minute 29 of Jurassic Park 3. Dave, ready to get into it? Alright.
As we ended minute 28 of Jurassic Park 3, Udeski had told Paul Kirby that we continue looking for his son, but in the direction that Dr. Grant's heading. As we begin minute 29, Paul drops a stern act. Says, "Excellent, excellent," and they all start running off after Dr. Grant and Billy. At the 13-second mark, we cut back to the ruined plane as Udeski's picking up a bent rifle from the mud. Billy's found his camera bag and is checking over the camera. And in the background we can see Paul's found some clothes from the wreckage and is heading behind the main fuselage to change. At the 30-second mark, we cut behind the plane as Paul sees Amanda's already there, half changed. He apologises and turns around. Amanda says, "Don't worry, it's nothing you haven't seen before." Amanda asks Paul how much weight did he say he lost. And Paul says about 25 pounds, and that he's been swimming. Amanda laughs and says, "You hate to swim." Paul replies, "I learnt." At the 50-second mark, it ends with Amanda saying, "You look good," and Paul saying, "So do you." And as the minute ends, we get a slow pan across a big footprint in the mud. Billy's taking photos, and Grant squats down beside him and asks, "How would you classify it, Billy?"
After we ended the last minute with just Udeski saying we look for your son, he answers here, or he continues here in the next minute, in the direction that they're heading. So he knows that Grant knows what he's talking about, and again probably knows too that it's not best to split up. Strength in, or safety in numbers and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, it's great. Paul goes from being stern from last minute where he says we're not leaving without our son to he's just sort of that charade or facade completely breaks and he just says excellent, excellent and goes back into goofy mode and starts following after Grant with Udeski and Amanda following him as well, which is a good little comedic beat there.
Yeah.
We see them move off into that massive jungle, which, as you're saying, last minute's one of the shooting locations they used, and we get that sort of military theme kick in here, where we had it before with when they were setting up the rifle in the old plane graveyard as well. Sort of that militaristic theme that plays through the film whenever they are on the march.
Mm-hmm.
But we cut back to the crash site. Udeski's crouched down at the sort of the front torn off section of the cockpit that the Spinosaur ripped off, and he's bent down looking at a useless rifle that he pulls up off the ground. The barrel's bent, so that's not going to be any use to him.
Fortunately not.
Which makes me wonder why he keeps the ammo clips on him for the rest of the film. I wonder if he sort of just being the mercenary, just keeping him in case he can find another weapon he might be able to reuse them in. The rounds at least anyway.
With those, you can actually, if you find a sharp pointed rock, you can actually smash the rock and ignite the bullet.
Mm.
Again, if you smash it against the bottom of the bullet, you can. It acts like a firing pin, and you could actually launch the bullet.
Yeah. Which I suppose too, looking at the bent rifle, I wonder if it's just the fact that he hasn't got anything to cut, because you could cut that bent bit off and just have a real short barrel. Again, if in a life and death situation, as long as you can get that round down range.
Mm-hmm.
But we sort of see Paul walk past in the background, disappears around that big tree that's in the middle of the set, and we can see one of the plane seats laying there, and Billy's crouched down, checking his camera equipment. He's found his camera bag, his lucky bag, and then we pick back up with Paul as he's walking around towards the crumpled fuselage and starting to take his shirt off, and he walks around the back of the wreckage to change, but Amanda's there already changing, and we get her in a bra, which some people will enjoy, but sort of Paul acts all embarrassed and says sorry, and Amanda turns and puts a shirt on and says, "Don't worry, it's nothing, it's not anything that you've seen before or haven't seen before." And apparently at some stage Paul told Amanda that he'd lost weight, because she sort of asks him, "How much was it again? Or how much weight did you lose again?" And Paul replies about 25 pounds. And that he's been swimming. Which, if you want to lose some weight, a bit of cardio in the pool is a good way to go.
Yeah, that's true.
Amanda sort of scoffs at it and says, "But you hate swimming, or you hate to swim." You don't even know how to swim. And Paul laughs, I learnt. Which, it's sort of funny, like another goofy moment here where him in his 50s, just learning how to swim so he can lose some weight. It's sort of, I think it's implied more in the novel and the script that it's sort of showing that he's changed a bit since the divorce. He's trying new things and that, and trying to be a better person maybe as well. But Amanda says you look good, and Paul replies, so do you. And then we cut out to that one of the large footprints that's in the mud, and in the reflection you can see Billy crouching down with his camera, and you can hear the shutter go off as he's taking a photo of it. And we pan up just as Grant joins Billy, and he asks, how would you classify it? And as the minute ends, Billy says, well, it's a super predator, and we'll go a little bit more into the back and forth with that next week. But anything on that you want to touch before we get into the script or novel comparisons?
There's not really a lot here to talk about. I do like that they used a practical footprint again to once again have that like real footprint there for us to look at. You know, it's not just something off screen.
I was going to bring that up with because we talked a lot about that in the Lost World, how they had that Tyrannosaur foot for making the footprints, and even the behind the scenes with the big container of different animal footprints or footprint making items. I wonder if it was that large animatronic foot they used to stand on the fuselage, because he would have had to have a pretty.
They might have used the foot there. Yeah, because I do know that they made a foot.
Also, the idea to go back to the plane after they'd just been chased away. It's interesting. Well, I suppose we theoried that after they ran off and found the wrecks and ran back, they were near the crash site, but they could have been somewhere completely different. Because obviously there's no Tyrannosaur dead here, and you can't hear a Spinosaur roaring, or there's no Spinosaur anymore. But you'd think it'd be sort of a last resort. Just okay, we're going to go back to the plane where we could encounter the Spinosaur again. They'd have to take a bit of a long way round if they were going to avoid where the Tyrannosaur had been brought down. Alright. In the script, everything happens pretty much the same. It's sort of described they search quickly, knowing Grant wants them to hurry up. Billy finds his camera intact. Paul finds his suitcase and gets a change of clothes, and he goes behind the fuselage and strips to his underwear before he spots Amanda changing also. So it's sort of interesting they bring up here with Paul actually getting his suitcase from the plane. And in the novel it's Amanda who finds a suitcase. And in going into the novel there with Amanda finding a suitcase, she goes behind the plane to change into something more suitable for the jungle, and Paul actually goes with her to change as well. Like it's not a surprise where one walks around and the other one's already changing. They both actually go together behind the plane to change, and that's where Amanda notices that Paul's lost weight, and sort of asks him how much he's lost. It's not alluded to that Paul's brought the subject up before. She sort of noticed he's a bit lighter.
It is. I mean, you could kind of tell. You could kind of suppose or speculate that she did already notice, and she just didn't want to bring it up, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, especially sort of Christmas parties and that or parties and events where you don't see relatives for a good year or so, or extended time anyway, where they'll either whether it's making conversation or not, oh, you've lost weight, or they'll come up and pat you on the belly and say it was a good field, was it? Sort of alluding to you put some pounds on. So, like they've, as they've said last minutes, they broke up or divorced about a year ago, so they probably, apart from the odd visits to pick up Eric for after his visitation, that sort of stuff, they probably wouldn't have seen each other or much of each other.